Hi folks, doing a little video today on a purchase I made a couple years ago, about a year and a half ago. Found one of these Toro Timecutters. It was late in the season for 2022 and they were looking to get rid of it, so I ended up purchasing it. It's been a good buy. I like it. There's some things that aren't, to my standards on it, but I'm kind of hard on manufacturers. I expect things to be a little better than they are perhaps, but overall I cannot complain about this machine. It has been held up. It's been pretty good. Has its flaws. Some of it may be my fault, but I'm a rookie operator with ZTRs. I never owned one before this one. It took me a few hours to get used to the steering and handling and everything about it, but after that we get along just great. I mow about 3 acres altogether on my property about once a week. This is coming up on about 100 hours. I've mowed with it for about a year and a half now. So you can figure out about how many acres I've done. It takes me about two hours to do 3 acres. Sometimes maybe just a bit more. Just depends on how close I try to get up around everything. It's a little slower than when I mowed with the tractor, but this is a whole lot easier to get up around things with. And that's kind of what the route I went with it for that, the convenience of it. Plus it's wide, it's 60 inches. Can mow fairly fast, can mow fairly tall grass. I mean, not outrageously tall, but it does a good job. I mean, I'm more than happy with it. But it's Toro Timecutter. The model number is 75760, I believe, and the 60 means the width of the deck. It is not a stamped deck. But what I mean by stamped is like they make the fenders on the, like my pickup. They lay metal on a table and the thing comes down and stamps it into shape. And that's not how the decks are made. They are actually pieces welded together, and it's thick pieces of metal. And this holds up a lot better overall over a long haul than something that's stamped. Stamped can be twisted and bent and wears. It's thinner metal usually because it is stamped. They need thinner metal to stamp. It's not possible with thicker stuff. But like I said, I've never owned one before, but it has these aluminum pieces on the front here on the yoke, above the yoke I should say, and they are bolted on separate from the frame, so if you whack something and crack one or bend one, they're made out of aluminum, I'm told, you can just take that off and replace it. The others that are steel, that stick out a little farther, they're a little harder to get up around in corners because that protrudes farther forward. Plus if you hit something and bend it, your frame is kind of bent then, and your mowing cut is adjusted. And I mean, you've either got to take the time to bend it back like a body shop would bend the frame of a car back in a line, or it's going to be messed up. And I like that in this one. I'd rather replace a part than have to take the time to really probably, who would do stuff like that? I don't know. I doubt if you'd want to do it yourself. If you were good enough at it, maybe you could, but once you bend something and bend it back, it's always going to be a little weak at where it was bent at. And I like this, and the fact that they're tucked back in, they're not protruding out like I said the other ones are. One thing I've had trouble with is these anti-scalp wheels on the front. I've had to re-weld this bracket onto my deck, and pardon my welding, but I'm just a farmer. But this wheel this metal would bend and this wheel would tuck back like that. And I don't hit things with the wheel, it's just the constant turning. It's dragging on the grass like it is touching the grass now. And that makes that bend over a period of time. You know, ground's hard. So what I did is I kept bending it back and straightening it up and got fed up with that. And I wanted to weld something on the side here, but I'd have to re-drill all the depth holes and everything. So what I did is I took fender washers, they call them, 3/8, and on the inside I've got 3/8 by 1.5 inches, and on the outside they're 3/8 by 2 inch, I believe, on both sides. I put those on there, and as you can see, that kind of doubles the thickness of that metal, and that keeps that fairly straight. I've been doing it like that for about 1.5 months now, and as you can see, it's still pretty straight. I did it all three. We're kind of in the same boat, and I did it to all three, and they've since then they've stayed straight. I can't complain about that. This is your depth adjustment. You use your foot to move this forward, and then you have what I call all the way up, or if you want to transport the machine, you lock it up. It goes clear down to 1 inch. I usually mow about 2.5. When I'm doing my side ditches or along the edge of the field, I put it up about 3, just to keep it up out of the dirt. Just to mow my regular yard here, I just run it at 2. But you can do that with your foot. It also has a speed adjustment for the transmission, the transaxles, whatever you want to call them. There's slow for like a beginner or tall grass. This is what they call transport mode for if you want to tow something or something like that. That's plenty fast enough for me right there. And there's, well, that's, forgive me, that's slow, that's transport, and that's fast. I've never used fast. Started out in slow, and I'm glad I did, because you've got to learn how to turn with this and not tear up your grass or hit things. You're going faster than you realize, and it doesn't stop on a dime always. These guys, professionals who mow with them, they make it look easy. It's like a race car driver. They make something kind of difficult look pretty easy. But you have the option of the 3 speeds. You know, maybe someday I'll be good enough to get up to the high speed. It has a 1/2 inch belt that runs the mower deck. I wish it was a heavier belt. I've not had any trouble with this in 100 hours. It's not squealing or anything. I just would feel better with a heavier belt for as big of a deck, as wide of a deck as this is. And the first time I used this, I was running against the side of a hill, and you know, when you do that, this raises up and rubs and goes along like it does, and it broke, split right up here, and I was aggravated with myself for doing that, but ordered a new one and just decided that I would found at the hardware store there's some pieces of metal, and I bent them and put them on there, bolted them on, and this is held together just fine. I mean, I don't need fancy looking, I just need something that works, and it deflects the grass fine. I've got a new one in the barn. I don't plan on putting it on anytime soon because this is held up so far so good. So I'm just going to stick with this. When I finally just do break it completely off, I'll reinforce the new one and stick it on. This is made out of a kind of a plastic. It's not really rubber, which is why it cracks. I guess they're very prone to cracking right up in here. Luckily mine hasn't done that, and like I said, I don't really hit stuff. If I'm going to mow around a tree, I use the other side to get up in there. And there's two reasons for that. One is this chute, and the other are these controls right here. You can see my hour meter there, 97.9. Got your throttle, choke, your PTO for your mower, and your key. When I first started out and I was learning this machine, I would go under a tree, and if the branch was down here and swipe across here, it would hit this key and shut the mower off on me. That's the one bad thing about it. This key is really sensitive and it's easy to bump it. That's something that Toro probably ought to look at, or, you know, I don't know. I just learned eventually, since that side does protrude out, and that's what the way it's actually made, don't get careless and try to do stuff like that. Try to use that side over there, like I say, if you're under a tree. Now these were the original tires, and that came with it. They're 20 by 10 by 10, and they have the turf tire, and there's nothing wrong with those. Those did a good job. It's just I mow on a slanted side ditch, and I would slip constantly. And I asked a fella who sells Toro and services them if he had any spare rims around that were 20, that would fit a 20 by 10 tire. And he looked around his shop, and he had collected a couple that weren't bent or tore up. He sold them to me for next to nothing. And I went and I bought these. These are like an ATC or a off-road four-wheeler type of tire. It's made by Carlisle, but they're more of a mud and snow type of tire, and they have the zigzag and a thick thing on each edge, on the outer edge. And when I'm on those slopes, I slide a lot less with this setup. They're the same size tire. These do just slightly taller, so I had to adjust my cut and everything. But I'm a lot happier with these. The problem with these are if the ground is muddy under the grass and you don't really stop completely and back up, you know, take a little more time with your turns, put it that way, you'll scarf your grass with the tire and make a divot or what. If you just pivot on one tire, these will dig in and kind of twist the sod up. That's the downside of it, but I'm happy with it. I'm learning how to do it, be gentler with my turns, and a lot less trouble, which is, you know, I prefer that anyway. This engine is made in China for Toro. I forget the company that makes it. It sounds like Walkman or something. Your air filter is in there, easy to get at. Carbs right below it. The hitch comes with the mower. You got this shield, which you can see I'm glad I've got one, because I get up against a few things when I back up, but I back up until I can't back up anymore. I did put a fuel shut off on this because in the winter time I'll shut it off. I'll shut the fuel off and run it out of gas to keep the carburetor empty over long spells of time. I've never had any trouble getting it to start up. I take the air filter off and squirt just a little carb cleaner in the carburetor, crank it over, and that's enough to get it going. And it gets the fuel in the fuel line and you're going again. One of the downfalls to me on this mower is the size of the fuel tank. It's only a 3-gallon tank. There is a sight gauge there, and you can see mine's just about empty through the sight gauge. I wish it had more like a 4 or 5-gallon tank, because I can mow this whole property, like I said, in fairly good time, 3 acres, and just barely have enough gas. Like if I went and ran 5 more minutes, I'd be running out of fuel. I just, for my own benefit, I wish it just had more capacity to hold the gas. That would be what I would say. There's adjustments on these two for the height. If you want them up taller, bring it up. You can also tilt this forward and backwards by this top bolt. Loosen this, loosen these. You can slide this back so they're closer to you. Stuff like that. This has an electric parking brake. When both of these are out, the brake is on and your transaxle can't move. That parking brake is under the battery here, and there's known to go bad. I haven't had to change mine, fortunately. This is actually it right here. It moves the little levers. When it activates, there's 2 metal rods that lock onto the gears on the transaxle. Your battery's there. When you want to change your oil, you pull this tube off. There's a little plastic nipple up in there that the hose slides up on, and it is a bear to get off of there the first time. I'll just warn you of that. But you work that off, take this out, and you can lay it down flat, either here or over there, and your oil will drain out. And I put a Wix filter on this. It matches up to the Toro. Toro filters are expensive. Everything you buy from Toro is expensive. I'm going to tell you that. Parts. I'm not putting it down. They sell what they sell, and not complaining. It's just it matched up thread wise and size wise. I've had it on for 40. Well, I changed the oil at 60 hours, so it's about 40 hours on it now. Filter's done just fine. It's not leaked or anything. I'm not recommending using anything but a Toro filter, but you can find Fram and Wix filters, and I think Sten sells filters that match up also, but you have to do your own research on that. When I first got this, you're advised to change the oil in your hydrostats at 75, and the first time you change your engine oil is at 5 hours, and then you're recommended to change it every 100, I believe. I'm planning to change mine every 50. The hydrostat you're supposed to break in and then change at 75. I did both. Changed my oil the first time at 5. The second time I changed it at 60 hours. And I changed both my hydrostats at the same time. And sometimes when I would mow, by the time the 2 hours or so was up and I was getting ready to be done mowing, these hydrostats were whining pretty loud, like they were getting hot. Began to kind of concern me a bit, but I changed the oil in them. I put in the premium stuff sold by Toro. It's supposed to be good for 500 hours. I put that in both sides, new filters, everything. Really, they've quieted down tremendously. I believe the oil they put in to break them in with is thinner, and it tends to let them heat up and wear more. Perhaps that's what they're supposed to do. I don't know. To me, that's kind of destructive to let them wear, because they, one could actually go bad on you. But that's what I did. You can actually change your own hydrostat oil in these. It's not terribly hard. Down at the bottom there is a filter in front of the, I don't know if you can see it or not, there's a guard, there's a filter. To drain it, you take the filter off and take the, there's a breather on top. The oil will all run out, and on the side of the hydrostat near the top is a plug, and on top of the hydrostat it is a fill plug. You take the fill plug out, you put your new filter and back on, put the guard back on, take the fill plug out of the top and the depth, plug off the side, put it that way, and begin to put oil in until it starts coming out the side hole. Then you close it up, both plugs, and then there's a procedure, you can find it on YouTube or through the manual, that you purge the air out, kind of run it back and forth gradually and get all the air out, and then you recheck your fluid level. Mine didn't take but just a tad bit once it I changed it. When I filled it up and warmed it back up again and checked it again, the fluid was just right where it was supposed to be, so it worked out. I do wish these were like the bigger models and had the reservoirs for the hydrostats up here. Mine doesn't. It's just, they're solid one-piece outfit. Others have a tube that comes up and you have an overflow reservoir. That would make it a whole lot easier to put the oil back in. And I may go that route if I can find a aftermarket place that sells them, that I could add those. I have the room here to put them on, and I'd like to have that option, but I'm not going to be changing the oil in that until I'm up around 250 hours, 300 hours, or they start to whine again like they're over, getting hot. That's the thing about that. When they're being noisy, something's not right, so you better check them out. Hydrostats, that's the rule I've learned with them. When they're loud, something's not quite right. But that is the machine. Oh, the blades. Forgot about that. The blades I recommend you use are these. They're Toro, made by Toro. Nothing wrong with them. They're a nice blade. They got a slight downward twist to them that I don't quite understand why they do that, but they do. Fairly lightweight blade. I did not like that. The first ones I had on there, I think I had about 12 hours on them. I took them off to sharpen them. They did okay, but I researched it, and through my parts store, local parts store, Oregon sells a blade that's just like it, that's slightly heavier, thicker, and it's made for a Dixie chopper, which is a commercial type of machine. So I bought a pair of those and I tried them out, and I was way happier with them. They don't get dull near as quick. They do just as good a job. It doesn't seem to pull the machine RPMs down or the blade speed down. It's not hurting anything. I've mowed with them since about 20 hours, so that's 70 hours. My spindles are fine, belt's fine, the clutch is still going just fine. I'm not recommending anybody do that. I just did it that way. And while I'm thinking about the blades, I'll show you one more thing. Get down here. There is a chute, piece to the chute that goes right here. Is for deflecting grass out. That, I don't know how to say it. It's split. It's metal, but it's thin metal, and it's split, and it was starting to rub against my blades. So I just took it off. I can live without the thing, anyway. It does just a good job without it. I don't even know what they call the thing. I know it's for like a grass catcher to help direct the grass out. But I don't use a grass catcher, and like I said, can get along without it. It's not the end of the world. But overall, that's my ups and downs about this Toro Timecutter. They're a decent machine. Mine does not have the myride, what they call it. Basically, your seat and your feet sit on a suspension system. It's a nice system, but it's about $700-800 more. That seat there is plenty comfortable for me. It's got springs on the back like a regular rider tractor seat. I rode on one of those all my life. Now I could put a seat with a cushion underneath of it or something. I do think they make those, and maybe I'll go that route someday. But I get off this thing after 2 hours. My back's not hurting, and you know, I'm feeling pretty good. So that's all I can tell you as far as that. But I just thought I'd tell you guys about my Toro Timecutter, what I like and what I don't like. But overall, I mean, it's an 8 out of 10, and I would recommend if you're looking for the zero turn. I don't know. I'm not going to comment on a stamped deck on a Toro or not. I like the forged deck a lot. It is a whole lot better built. It's like the mower I use on my tractor. It's being forged. To me, that's just the way to go for as far as reliability and the thing being built well. And it's, I mean, you can still tear them up, but it's a lot more durable. But you folks take care. Have a good day. Signing off.